and profiling help.
Okay, thank you very much, Jenny. So can we have Henry introduce himself, then Dumisani, then Mama Msepe.
Thank you, Chengi, and thank you all panelists. Henry Machemba, National Coordinator for the Coalition of Malawi. We are a membership organization who sees all the NGOs in the child rights sector in Malawi. We have been existing from 2010, and we have grown big now. We have been joined the panel and also to the discussion where we are discussing the CRISA strategic plan guiding our operations in the next 3 years, 3 to 5 years. Thank you.
Dumisani.
I am Madineo Mutepe. I'm the Secretary General of the Lizama Child Rights Network. We are part of the founders of the organization. I am also the Deputy Chairperson of CRISA. So we are here today. We welcome everybody.
Thank you, Mama Msepe. I hope Dumisani can hear me so that he can just introduce himself. Are you there, Dumisani? You'll need to unmute. May I ask our chair?
Can you hear me?
Okay, now, yes, we can hear you now. Please go ahead.
That's strange the way it is. I hear you very well, but the Henry's sound was very, it was fading. I don't know what happened. Good morning, colleagues. Sorry for sometimes networks. These days we call from homes. The position here is Executive Director for Save the Children in Eswatini. But I'm also wearing a hat as a CRISA board. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dumisani. And then now I just want to acknowledge the presence of our chairperson of CRISA. She is our current chairperson, and she's also the chair of the CSO Forum. Mayor Emilia, could you kindly introduce? Madam Chair, I don't know whether you can hear me. I would have wanted you to introduce yourself now before we begin the proceedings. I don't know whether you can hear me. Issues there, but we welcome Yuma Omilia to this meeting. Now, I just want to quickly have the children introduce themselves. I know there's Ruvarashe. Just introduce yourself quickly, and then we can move on. Ruvarashe, please introduce yourself.
I think she needs to unmute.
Yeah, she's unmuted, but I don't know why she's not speaking. We can't hear you. Perhaps it's a network thing. I think there possibly is a sound issue there, but we can see you. Thank you so much for when we are going to give you a chance to speak, because right now we can't hear you, but we can see your pretty face, and we're happy that you are here with us. Okay. I think we have to move on now because we are behind time, as you know, others to join us. Apologies for that. So as we kick off, I'm just going to start off by asking Felicitas, the coordinator of CRINSA, to kick us off by setting the pace really and sharing what the new strategic plan of CRINSA is like. And like I said earlier, we're really very excited about our strategic plan. And this is the platform that we are really saying, let us share our excitement with you. So Felicitas, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Tenge, and good morning to all colleagues who have managed to brace the morning to join us. I know that this is a session that is ushering us to the next session for the committee, so we will also be minding time. Thank you so much. In terms of the how CRINSA has now reviewed its strategic plan, the 2015 to 2019, and we now have a new strategic plan in place, 2020 to 2023. And the strategic plan is the one that is as a collective. You would recall that CRINSA is a network organization. It's made up of 11 organizations right now that also have a membership. So we currently are in 11 out of 16 SADC countries, and within those 11 countries, we're working through the national structures. So at country level, child-related or child service organizations have a collective of, they have grouped themselves together so that is collaborative advocacy, that there is synergy with interventions that are being provided, the civil society organizations. But more than that, that is accountability insofar as child protection, child well-being, and issues around safeguarding and protection are concerned. And that is the structure now that CRINSA is able to work through. So if you look at the structure that then CRINSA utilizes, you'd recognize that it means that CRINSA through the national networks is made up of the many organizations at district, village, district, and national level. So this is who CRINSA, I share my screen. Okay, something is happening with sharing the screen. Okay, just to start us off, CRINSA's new vision now is a Southern Africa where children's rights are respected, they are protected, and they are fulfilled. As a result of that, we exist as a network to facilitate effective national and sub-regional movements for child rights in Southern Africa, so that as a collective now we can contribute to a stronger SADC as well as to a stronger African movement for children's rights. Movement for children's rights. For the longest time, when you look at issues of children, you would find that engagement with different stakeholders, and particularly duty bearers, is that children's issues are soft issues, and therefore we needed not to have a strong movement around children. Also because the issue of nothing for us without us also meant back then that child participation wasn't viewed as an element that we needed to recognize as stakeholders. So that then meant that the child rights movement generally is not as strong as perhaps you would find with other movements. And at a regional level, we find that when you compare the child rights movement with that of labor or unions or trade, those are much stronger movements because perhaps they deal with issues around the SADC civil society organizations on the children's sector would want to form a stronger SADC for movement of children, as well as contribute to the African movement for children to be stronger. We pride ourselves in the fact that we have values that centers around children's rights, children's needs, and children's interests as the core issues that are at the heart of what we do as civil society organizations in SADC around values of non-discrimination issue, values around interdependence, because we recognize that as much as we're working around the sector, we also need parents, we need teachers, we need social workers, we need policymakers. So there's interdependency for us to be able to do what we are currently doing. We are also saying that our values are also, we can equally hold other stakeholders or allies or partners within the child sector accountable as well, insofar as protecting the children's rights is concerned, insofar as promoting children's rights is concerned, but also in terms of fulfilling these rights. We also pride ourselves as a network that we would want to ensure that at the core of what we do, continuously ensure that we can communicate the practices around children, and that is why we have this session today. If you look at the program as Chenge had laid it out for us, you would see that this is also a learning platform where we are going to be borrowing best practices from the national networks in terms of the various thematic areas that they focus on, and that which is doing well in the different countries. And we pride ourselves that through the strategic plan, we'll continue to ensure that there's unity diversity that we have within the region, so that with that diversity we can bring together as a strength. In terms of our how we do our things, firstly, we connect as a network, we coordinate and we capacitate. So those 3 C's for us help us working around the sector to realize children's rights. And if you look at how we connect and how we coordinate and capacitate, like we said, we work at national, sub-regional, and continental level. So that means that at different countries, we're connecting the different organizations at different at country level, and then coordinate the region as around service provision, whether we're talking education, we're talking nutrition, or we are talking issues of policy in general. We have to gather evidence. We need to employ intelligence approaches to gathering this evidence. Remember that we work with children, which in most cases are viewed as minority insofar as the age element. So the gathering of intelligence, as we will hear from Zambia as well, in terms of how they use intelligence to be able to get children to do what they should be doing, is one element that we pride ourselves in. And the evidence then facilitates for us to then engage the various stakeholders, whether these stakeholders are your traditional leaders, or they're your faith-based organization leaders, or they are your policymakers. We have to use that evidence and knowledge to influence. And the influence is coming at various levels. This could be an influence where we are changing children, or attitude in terms of the policy itself. The current policies and laws that we have around children within the different countries of SADC, because currently we don't have anything that speaks to SADC as a region in relation to children that we can facilitate for influencing mindsets or review of these laws and enactment of policies. Secondly, the pillar we addressing is strong civil society voice, action and movement for children. I think we've already indicated what we want to achieve there in terms of strong civil society organizations in the SADC region. But over and above that, we are saying that we want to move beyond the rhetoric and now ensure that whatever we agree on, we can action it, we can be able to implement it, we can monitor ourselves, we can hold each other accountable in software development for effectiveness and sustainability. And that is a pillar that facilitates for us to continuously agree or continuously recognize that we need, as institutions on the child sector, build our capacities on different issues. There's new researchers that are coming on board. We need to continuously evolve in terms of the capacity to engage on those thematic areas. As indicated, we currently have 11 members from 11 countries of SADC in Angola, in Botswana, in Lesotho, in Malawi, in Mozambique, in Namibia, in Eswatini, Swaziland, in South Africa, Tanzania, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. So those are the countries that we currently have footprints in. We still have a long way to go in terms of bringing the islands on board, your Madagascar, Seychelles, Mauritius, Comoros, and DRC. So in terms of the things that we want to achieve going forward, is that as a network, as a collective, we want to ensure that we contribute to SADC aspirations, the SADC we want in terms of children of SADC. We want to contribute to the Africa Fit for Children insofar as the Africa Agenda 2040 is concerned, as well as Africa Agenda 2063 is concerned, as well as go to the global level where we're contributing to the implementation, proper implementation or effective implementation of the UNCRC, as well as the SDGs. As I move towards the end, one might ask, so CRINSA is a membership organization, and as a membership organization, we're working with all the national structures that also do have members. What are the benefits of being a CRINSA member? One of the benefits is the child and influence the SADC region or SADC as an organ into so that people transfer the skills now have to do with us the Chenge that we have in March to the better monitoring national law that they are inclusive and ensuring that they are sticking to one of factors. But also monitoring child rights where we see on the UNCRC children's reports, as well as reports to the African Charter. Recently, we have communication with the committee that is taking foot in terms of the SADC region. And we are happy that we are seeing Tanzania and South Committee for the child segment, the stronger together for children would actually yield results. And of course, the CSO forum that is currently ongoing as the CSO forum. So and stronger together for children in the SADC region, but beyond that in the African continent.
That overview of the strategic plan. And what's so exciting about that strategic plan as well is that there was a lot of consultation with our CRINSA members to ensure that whatever comes out as the final strategic plan, which we now have, was actually the voice of our members. So we are very excited about that. Thank you, Felicitas. And I think what you have done there is to actually kick off the pace for us to now have our panelists come on board and actually share experience at national level. And when they are sharing that, it will be actually clear to see that the national, the strength of the national networks actually then feeds into the regional advocacy agenda. So I'm going to quickly move on to our panel so that they can now make their short presentations. We are running behind time. I would not want to stifle the essence of your presentations, but just perhaps to ask you kindly to just summarize so that we can stick within our time. So I'm going to start now with Malawi, and I'll call upon Henry Machemba. He has already introduced himself, and Malawi has had a lot of exciting advocacy around addressing the concluding observations for Malawi in their implementation of the UNCRC as well as the African Charter. So Malawi, Henry, please go ahead and share your experiences.
Thank you, Chenge, and thank you all. Yeah, as already introduced myself, that I'm from the NGO Coalition on Child Rights in Malawi, a membership organization. And our vision is to see a Malawi society in which children's rights are promoted, respected, protected, and fulfilled. And our mission is to contribute towards the promotion, respect, protection, and fulfillment of child rights in Malawi through evidence-based advocacy, coordination amongst ourselves, assessors, and building capacity of our CSO members, but also generating evidence through research and monitoring. So for Malawi, the coalition provides leadership in terms of international treaty reporting. We also contribute to the UNCRPD and also CEDAW reporting mechanisms, as specifically focusing on the child rights aspect. Idea is that the NGO coalition would want to work with government and all stakeholders in Malawi incorporated in the national programs, and also they are financed, they are monitored, and they make sure that they are implemented before the subsequent reporting period. So with this in mind, and also learning from the past that Malawi has been missing reporting deadlines, reporting cycles, for especially for the African Charter, where they did not submit the initial report up until around 2017. And that meant that a number of cycles holders, we agreed and they make sure that they are being resourced, and various ministries, departments, and agencies are adopting them as part of their programs, and that we should be able to see results on the ground. That's why after the Charter, African Community of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child in 2018, the coalition and other partners and like UNICEF to adopt the concluding observations to various stakeholders to make sure that they are aware of what has come and what the committees took a process of simplifying the COPs to have a child-friendly version, so that children also the treaty bodies have allocated implementing institutions, the heads of implementing institutions, where we sensitized them with the aim of understanding to discuss and brainstorm on what it takes to implement a particular concluding observation, whether the concluding observation is touching on the policy, for policy formulation or policy implementation, or whether it's touching on system. So we had that process of understanding each and every concluding observation with key players and key heads of institutions that were that we perceive to have a mandate of implementing the same. And after that process, that's when framework where key players came together, identified key interventions to be done to implement a particular concluding observation, and decide on the time frame, and also and allocated to a particular to lead in the implementation process. And after developing that framework, PSOs and also government departments, so that they were aware of what has been proposed as key interventions to make sure that whenever the Minister of Finance has presented a budget in Parliament, as a coalition, one of our key interventions is on the child-friendly budgeting and investment in children. So under this, we track and analyze the national budget each and every year to see whether key programs and key child-related interventions are being financed from the national budget. And during this, from the treaty bodies, whether they are being financed, whether resources are being allocated to implement key analysis, we use the results of the analysis to advocate, to engage various players, including parliament, parliamentary committees, and also key ministries and departments, so that they continuously reflect on the COBs. And after when the moves to monitoring and tracking expenditure, the government expenditure, to make sure that at least the resources through the national budget are being implemented on the ground. So it's a cycle of monitoring implementation of the say implemented, and wherever there are gaps, as in the government departments and gaps that we have, the treaty instruments, the charter and the UNCRC are domesticated through laws and policies, but also national frameworks and even budgeting that the government produces each and every year. Because one of the lessons that we realized that because of the changes in government ministries and departments in terms of leadership, aware of the treaty obligations and also the concluding observations, and maybe they may not be aware of how to actually implement them as a department or as a ministry. So we continuously need to engage them and remind them of what are the obligations and how that can be fulfilled on the ground. So basically, that's what I can share as regards to the implementation of the concluding observations, working with the government. And
thank you very much, Henry, from the Malawi network, for sharing those experiences. Seems you are doing quite a lot around engaging government and even trying to partner with government. Thank you for that. May I encourage participants to already begin to post their questions or comments so that we can then attend to them later. To share what has been happening in Lesotho, especially regarding the strong partnerships that Letsema has with government. Over to you, Mahmoud.
Thank you, Chenge. I already have introduced myself. And also thank you, Prinsa, for recognizing Lesotho and identifying Lesotho as the best practice of working with government. This is a big honor, because to be a best practice, it says a lot of things. How, why, and what. So in a normal, and it is through good governance, accountability, and transparency that one could be considered as doing what would be regarded as a best practice, because a best practice is something that somebody or other organizations can learn from and replicate. So it is not a well-researched, my presentation is not a well-researched presentation because of the shortage of time, but I think it is posing a challenge to Letsema. as a member organization, why Lesotho identify as a best practices. A best practice in this case, it is indicated by a few acts of government of Lesotho. Within the 5-year memorandum of understanding, there are parameters, and Letsema draws its mandate again from its membership. And for the government of Lesotho to have signed a memorandum of understanding, it means we are not there, but I think we are trying. Letsema, a rent-free working space, something that is very unique for Lesotho. And I would like also to say we have received the first tranche of our, there's something that attracts the organization. I would also want this meeting, but all the civil society organizations that have networks. So Letsema for us, because it's a child-based organization, it is again founded on the cultural values. Letsema itself. Letsema means working together, collaborating, and communicating about. We are communicating about our mission, which our mission is Lesotho, where child rights. We as Letsema, Basotho naturally work as Letsema, because we are saying we are Letsema development partners of the government of Lesotho. And we are saying, while it is really, it's an honor for us to say there are some milestones that might have contributed to CRINSA recognizing Letsema as the best practice. And one of children are not heard, but they are seen. And for Letsema Child Rights Network, the program of their own development brought us their hopes, their dreams, which are contained in the instruments that were one of the milestones that we are saying. It's for Letsema to be sitting on technical teams of the government of Lesotho. We bring influence some of the decisions as they are being made, that being part of the technical team. Also, when we, for instance, Malawi talked of reporting. When we report as normally done, we do the reporting after the government is a complementary report. And from the complementary report, we carry on the implementation of the concluding observations and recommendations. I think also what really made us special was when we were developing the first ever Child Protection and Welfare Act in 2011. Ours was informed by effective participation of children, and that made it so unique. And even now, we still continue working with government, whereby Lesotho children were expressing their feelings or their expectations, even their sad experiences brought about by COVID-19. Later on, after the children sat on their own and compiled their opinions and even the recommendations that they are part of the decisions to be made on COVID, immediately, with support of Southern African parliamentarian Support Trust and CRINSA, the children had a dialogue with the members of parliament. And that already is, we are being asked to work with the clerk of the National Assembly so that children, because I think the children's voices are stronger than us adults, because they are saying, as the Child Rights Network, we continue to gather or get, so the children of Lesotho are the drivers of their own development program. We are being advised by them how to do things that we are budgeting, including the institutionalized in the local government structures, the children, and we are happy to also say at district level, district child protection teams, which again are a vehicle. I would a best practice. We will share more in the future, and I think it is challenging us to say go and do in depth before this meeting that what we are doing best is participation of children in decision-making processes. It's again listening to children. You know, working with children because they are energetic, they move fast, it becomes difficult. And we will be opportunity.
Doing through the Letema, the regions, the CSO.
Opportunity. Doesn't it say as in Swaziland how we have mental organization, and within the coordinating the critical consortium is the children. And with given the fact that the COVID affecting the champs to come up, where as a country where situation we have got 4 regions or be responsible for the coordination of COVID interventions. Clearly, we all are aware that our governments are struggling. It is overwhelming, the cost involved. So the technical, as we call it, COVID working group, essentially was trying to look at how can we spread the net in terms of trying to see if we can get more resources. We then throw around some few proposals, and I think we have been successful, but we're still looking forward to other people contributing. So what happened was, specifically for civil society, we decided that one of the critical interventions that we saw as civil society was that in as much as government was doing radio, TV, awareness creation, we needed to have people on the ground. So we coined our intervention as establishing or creating what we call food soldiers, that community. So we set up this technical working group. We identified the partners that work throughout these 5 or 59 constituencies. We then asked them to identify what we call the food soldiers, a maximum of say 16 per region, per constituency, depending on how big it is. We then conducted a TOT. We identify a few of the champions that are already working within those organizations. We conducted a TOT for 2 days where we're taking them through the whole genesis of the COVID-19 in terms of what are the issues, in terms of are focusing, at least when we got support from OSISA, and it was split into 2. The one aspect was just entirely on PPEs to support government through interventions. And then the other aspect was more on monitoring what we call human rights violation. So it's premised on, in as much as we give information, but they go out there, they go to schools, they go to health facilities, they go to shops. They can even position themselves along roadblocks. Essentially, what they are monitoring is if government is committed to PPEs and infrastructure, what our food soldiers are doing We have given them a tool, a very comprehensive tool. So what they do is to go around and check if it's a school, do they have proper sanitizers positioned or hand washing basin positioned? Are teachers wearing masks? In fact, just there's a whole checklist that we give them that they need to check to ensure that those institutions indeed are abiding by the COVID-19 regulations set by government. But we also go to institutions like health facilities, hospital, to see if the healthcare providers themselves, do they respect and adhere to those COVID regulations? And we also encourage them to do what we call a one-to-one interview. So for instance, if they go to a school, they can talk to a few children and say, what are their experiences? Do they feel safe in the school? Do they feel all the precautions are being followed? Same within a health facility. They can just observe, that's the first thing they do. And then once they've observed, they document. And in some instances, we encourage them to do interviews. If they go to a police station, for instance, then they have to observe, are the officers, how are people treated? Are there no human rights violation? Are people treated with respect and dignity as human beings? A church, it could be a meeting hall, it could be a community meeting. And we want to document these experiences to see if indeed, in terms of our response to COVID, we are adhering to ensuring that we respect people's rights and we actually give them a dignified service. Essentially, one of the aspects, of course, is to hold government accountable, because it's one thing that they make announcements on TV, on radio, that they'll be doing this. In fact, we're not just monitoring government, but we're monitoring all service providers. In some instances, it could be the civil society themselves, to see if indeed, in terms of our response. So, and then the bases are supposed to collect them experience and observe COVID and WHO regulations and looking for more children, but we're trying to do acknowledgement with us. We are also over and above distribution with assessment, government, the National Disaster Management Unit. So over and above, we are also subsequently doing a lot of other. But in that process, we have committed ourselves as a civil society to also monitor those and document those experiences. So in short, that is what we're doing.
Thank you so much for sharing those experiences in Eswatini. And I picked up the foot soldiers and the efforts that they are doing on the ground. Very interesting, because the perspective of the impact of COVID on children has not really been widely explored, but it is coming out. All the programs that government is putting into place from a child rights perspective. Thank you so much for that. Now, I'm going to call upon Judith from Zambia to also share what is happening in Zambia. And we have seen a lot of child participation going on there, and we would like to hear more about it from you, Judith.
Thank you, Chenge. Good morning, colleagues. And thank you for this opportunity. Here in Zambia, we regard child participation as a cross-cutting issue in our child rights advocacy or child rights interventions. Of course, we know that child participation is one of the 4 principles of the 2 child rights instruments, both the UNCRC and the African Charter. And apart from issues of non-discrimination, apart from the principle of non-discrimination, the principle of ensuring that whatever we do, children survive and develop, and we also give them the chance to speak out, and that whatever we do should be in the best interest of children. And of course, we know that the principles are a vehicle by which we ensure that children enjoy, exercise, or claim their rights but also there are substantive provisions for the children. So in terms of child participation, we believe that child participation is not necessarily children being able to speak to the president or to the policymakers. It's about them being given the chance to make decisions in their lives, meaning from their house, from their family level, from their community level, from the faith, where they congregate to pray or worship, depending on their religion. It's about where children are found. So we try and mainstream those interventions where children are given the opportunity to speak, the platforms to speak, and where adults in their lives, not just NGOs or parliamentarians, including their parents, listen to them, encourage them, and support them to speak out on those issues that affect them, especially where families are making decisions. And we found that though NGOs, we encourage children to speak out to parliamentarians, to policymakers, to other public figures, we are very wary of doing the same in their households. So there is a gap between their homes, their schools, how much participation is going on in their schools, in their churches, and then suddenly their national ambassadors are speaking out. So there is that gap. It almost seems, to me, I've been in this sector for some time, it almost seems like we keep children that are able to speak in a little cupboard, and then when there's a national event or a side event like this one, with no disrespect to the children who are going to speak here, I'm just giving it as an example, then we take them out of the cupboard, dust them up, and they are able to go and speak to the committees on the rights of the child, the committee of African experts and so on, where we forget that child participation should really be in their homes. The other thing that we seem to overlook, that we've been critically looking at in Zambia, is the interlinkedness of the right of the child to have a say, and what they say given due weight to the accessing of other rights. Let's say maybe with civil and political rights, or the right of freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, religion, freedom of association. If these are lacking, it's very, very difficult for children to have a say in matters that affect them, because it becomes very difficult for them. So we try and encourage these other rights to be there. And also the right to adequate standard of living. Very few children that don't have, the basic needs would feel compelled to belong to a youth group, would feel compelled to belong. That's one. Then the other, in our work as children, had children to a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Education in 2003 with the support of UNICEF about the provisions that time in the UNCRC, later in the African Charter. So in these clubs, and then these same children will be able now to teach, to be peer educators on their rights to other children. And we've had pretty good, successive stories of these child rights clubs members. They go on to become fairly constructive members. One of our candidates walked in and handed over a certificate of having been a member of the child rights clubs at school with my signature. These child rights clubs, they value their certificates. This is after the person has gone on to university and done other jobs, but they still hang on to these certificates, which we give them at the end of each year, that they were members of the child rights clubs. But then over time, with the slogans, leaving no one behind, we started to think, so which children are we really, they are members of child rights clubs? When they are speaking, they speak like they are from NGOs, they are junior NGOs speaking, categorize them, and we decided to engage them, especially in reporting on the rights of the child. And we categorize the usually marginalized as those children living in abject poverty, the children working and living on, children in marriages, children engaged in child. These children are usually not free. So we decided that we're going to engage these children. But then we're used to going to schools, setting up clubs on the street next to them where they are, hanging out, and start talking to them about children's rights and things like that. And so we decided to define themselves as poor. Usually they don't, they know they don't have the means, but they would not accept that they are poor. And I had this brought to me some time back. I was going to a rural place which is considered one of the poorest provinces in Zambia, and my daughter had just gone to university, so there was a number of backpacks that she used to use. I thought, I could give to some girls in the rural areas. And as I was driving, I would see children with their exercise books in plastics. The yellow ShopRite plastics were the ones who seemed like they had something. And therefore, I would stop and offer those backpacks to those kids. And all of them to the T refused to accept my backpacks. Even when I asked to speak to their parents said, why us? What makes you think we are so poor that we want to accept your backpack? No, our children are quite fine. And of course, there is the myth of Satanism in this country. So I was probably, suspected to be a Satanist. So I came back with the 4 backpacks that I thought I would help a poor child. So you don't pigeonhole people as poor because they don't regard themselves as poor. Disabilities, that's a different thing because they have them. It's most of them are physical. The mentals are a bit difficult. So those are easier to identify. Children living on the streets, they are also easier to see, but not easier to because they just disappear. They just, they will, if you approach them, they will not speak to you because they are afraid that they may be rounded up and end up in police stations. And I learned when I tried to engage with some, they would say, so kusogolo, they would shout kusogolo. And then I wondered what that was. It was actually, I learned later that is the catchword they have, because the police, when they arrest them, they don't allow them to speak. They say, you are going to talk kusogolo meaning forward, where we are going to the police stations. So now the children on the streets, they'll say kusogolo meaning they are going to catch you. So how do we identify them? Then we arrived at the decision that the only way we can identify them is work with the government department that is mandated to look after the welfare of the indigent. And in this country, it is the Ministry of Community Development and Social Services, the Department of Social Services. They have a register of poor households whom they support. They have a register of children from all these groupings, living in poverty, living on the streets, with disabilities, children with children, and so on. So we then approach the government. We approach the ministry, and we say to them, we would like for them to identify for us such children so that we collect their voices and pass them on to the African Committee on the Rights and Welfare of the Child when Zambia presented its initial and first state party report. Previously, in 2003 and 2016, we had worked with children from child rights clubs, the elite kids from child rights, clubs who can rattle off their, substantive core minimum provisions like it's Judith Mlenga rattling it off. And they had done a report, and when you actually look at the sentiments from the civil society shadow report and the children's, it's almost like it's the similar reports talking, because they see their child rights from that perspective. So we decided that we're going to work with those children whose voices are normally marginalized, so that they can then, the African Committee of Experts can actually listen to the voices of the children. So after identification, we had the problem of children should be work with people who are familiar. When you approach and consult children and you are strangers, they will inevitably place themselves in that mode where they will tell you what they think you want to hear from them. So we thought the best to facilitate this collection of their views are the same social welfare officers whom they are familiar with, whom they work with. And we decided to do it with 3 districts, all 3 of them rural, because this time we really wanted the marginalized. So all 3 of them were rural districts. And we were going to do a trainers for them to collect information from children. So when we had our children, then we had the facilitators whom they were going to be interfacing within the languages that they speak. Then we needed to look at the tools. What tools? How do we collect these? What tools do we use for the children? Fortunately, sometime long back, together with Dumisani and some other organizers, Dishwanielo from Botswana, we were trained by some consultant commissioned by Save the Children Sweden on which child-friendly tools to use when collecting information. And I remember this training was conducted in Eswatini, some posh lodge. And that training stayed with us. And in Zambia, we have tweaked some of them to make them more responsive to the local conditions. So we have a whole toolkit of these tools that we use to engage with children. And so we trained these social welfare in the different tools for them to use for the children to collect the different types of information needed on, say, the topic family life, the topic general measures of implementation, child protection, and all these. So we looked at the thematic groupings as per the guidelines of the African Committee of Experts. And we decided, okay, this tool can best be collect information on this thematic group, this tool on that thematic group. Next, we had to see, okay, out of the guidelines given by the African Committee of Experts, which of those issues could children competently speak to? Most of the guidelines, mutatis mutandis, would be legislative framework, administrative procedures, maybe then the budget allocation, resource allocation. And we thought those legislative framework, children will not be able to speak to most of them, especially the type of children we wanted, the marginalized children. They may speak to some administrative procedures because they work with the Ministry of Community Development. And so they know how they are treated, what services they get. And they may not speak they may not speak at all to the budget, because even the district offices, they don't know what budget allocations are in the national budget. So then we decided, we looked at the guidelines, and then we simplified the guidelines to those key issues that children could speak to. Our intention was that the committee hears the children's views. And after that, we then had the training with the social welfare officers. And then we had
really shared quite a lot, and I'm sure the participants have really gained from this. I'll quickly move on to Botswana. Remachete, if you can also just briefly share with us what is happening in Botswana around fostering partnerships with Parliament, then I would like to really move on to the children. They've really been waiting and itching to share their experiences as well, and it would be sad to end this conversation without having the children actually speaking for themselves. So Rema Chete, over.
Thank you, Chenge. Thank you to the presenters before me. Colleagues, as you might be aware or not, we are a network of NGOs that deal with children. We made a decision to register a formal network sometime last year when we had our first child rights convention, which ended up in a general meeting where we made a decision to register the network. Now, we are still undergoing registration. We haven't quite concluded, but the process is ongoing. The objective really is to coordinate the work of the CSOs that deal with children across the country. And we had 32 founding members, with Chairline Botswana as the secretariat, hence my being here today. Some of the work that we've done previously was submission, although we didn't necessarily do it as a network, but as a collective of CSOs who then went on to UNCRC, and the country was doing that for the second time, having done so previously more than 10 years back. And that was then submitted in 2019 when the country appeared before the committee of experts. In 2019, again, we hosted the first National Child Rights Convention, where we basically held off in the country. At the end of the 4-day convention, we came up with a communique that basically focused on 3 areas, being mainly our issue with implementation of the Children's Act, which was enacted about 11 years ago, and not much traction has been gained. We had serious an observation that we did a lot of resources into our education as well as into our healthcare systems, but the same welfare. So to say it was an economic development when he initially presented to do an analysis, but we also find development. I think doing about into the letter to members of parliament. We do not get secondary where perhaps that's the fit as the civil society basis. Yeah, engaging and lot of propositions that we did, with the idea that when they get to engage, a child rights perspective, then went on to engage with. To remember to be soft issues. They are from best when people talk about youth, to do a lot more. And like I said, it's a continuous process, and luckily enough for us, insofar as the budget is normally called the budget veto, which is basically not intended to fully participate in. So it shall be what exactly we would benefit. One of the things that we have done on exploitation is quite high in the country. Went into lockdown. And as you know, tip of the eye, strengthen our response rated at the highest for development. But the Member of Parliament continues engaging in the debates, engaging in the business of the National Assembly. That by itself, that which is right to disadvantaged communities, starting the member could potentially also be by implication to do fishy children. We hold fully closed and conclude a position that under this only protect us, but if he lacks them so far, calling for that we close high more money, as also to say by those that we can't have so heinous and so far as gender-based violence and child sexual exploitation or child welfare is concerned. That's a clear conflict. So we are not only petitioning for him to take leave of absence, but we also say they need to have a code of conduct that will clearly make sure that in these instances there's a way that's the work that we've been doing with Parliament, but it's a continuous process that we will hopefully master over time. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for your presentation around engaging the Parliament of Botswana on child rights issues. I hope that all of you can begin to just throw in. So those who would want to throw in their questions and comments, please do that on the chat, as we have really run out of time. So we may not be able to then have a very long time for discussion. So right now I want to quickly go to the children. They've been itching and waiting to share their presentations, and they're just going to speak to the issues affecting them as children in their different countries, and they are going to be brief. They've promised me. They're Ruarashe from Zimbabwe, and then I'm going to ask Batung from Lesotho to also share the experience. So in that order, may we have the children start their presentations. Ruarashe, are you there? Ruarashe is from Zimbabwe. You are unmuted, but I think we can't hear you. Ruarashe, are you there? Seems we... Are you there, Ruarashe? I think there's a bit of a challenge there. So perhaps we can move on to Batung from Lesotho. Good, great. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If you are better, I think I will.
Batung, an echo. So if you are able to maybe mute the other gadget, or just use, or perhaps it's our network. I'm not sure. Okay, Ruarashe is on now.
Guys, hear me? Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about the impact of poverty on children that I was saying, sorry, that I'm going to be talking about the impact of COVID-19 on children in Zimbabwe. So there are actually different issues and challenges that children have been going through during the COVID-19. Okay, so this includes education, child marriages, high rates of child death, increasing cyberbullying. We
can't hear you properly.
Sorry, can you hear me?
No, it's too. We can't hear you.
like I mentioned, I'm just going to mention increase in child poverty, cyberbullying, registration, education, in tertiary education reliance on online platforms, inappropriate content, which actually might be e-learning. As we know that actually in learning, so now that their teachers actually with guidance and into the lockdown, there's less seizures for that to communicate with the caregivers. Parents do not even communicate with that language. This is different whereby they're at school, they can communicate with their friends, and they can communicate with their teachers. And then we have the issue of, as a result of global economic turndown, could result in hundreds of child deaths in 2020. So it's really know that most economies have been shut down to reduce the spread of coronavirus, and some of the parents that this result in a parent not able to give a child a certain meal or meals that they which may lead to malnutrition, and shelter in place measures come with heightened risk of children witnessing or suffering violence and abuse. Children in conflict settings as well as those living in unsanitary and crowded conditions such as families. So here in Zimbabwe, we have got a place no social distance that is happening, which might risk in the increase of the virus, and also in
that the sound is not very clear. I could hear what you were saying, but I get feedback that others are not doing you the presentation. Yeah.
Child safety whereby they're social media and to make them whereby there is not enough they're not even admitted hospitals, they're not admitted during the COVID-19 era do not have birth certificates, which is actually a problem because it has not been the disease. And then there's safety, there's violence by children are vulnerable to, yes, also to COVID-19 on children, and this is illness that I just mentioned a few, and also I just hope that we can join hands together and maybe make ways and on how we can actually solve these problems. Thank you so much for listening to me, and if there's any questions, I'm sure there's a platform for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruba. Apologies to those who couldn't really hear her clearly, but sorry, and I apologize that we've really gone. Our two other children called upon Batung. Kino Fernando Caetano also, please be prepared to speak. So Batung, are you ready? And keep it short because we have really run out of time. Are you there, Batung?
First, moreover, to thank the dedicated coordinators. Nearly 2 months ago, I began to feel or continued with school. I gathered up courage in uncle with whom I lived. He, however, internally turned a blind eye and concluded that I was probably just imagining it because I hated it. I smiled half-heartedly, not convinced by his argument. Some days passed. On one particular morning, I arrived at school with a heavy beating in my chest that left me unable to breathe and exhausted, hardly unable to walk. One of my school bus mates had forgotten to take for high blood pills. Again, I smiled half-heartedly, as I didn't want to be the kid who suddenly fell ill because someone else did. I didn't want to be seen as an advantage. Arriving in class, I dragged myself towards my seat, my state only worsening. I began to lose breath, almost completely unable to breathe, with the mask on my face not easing the situation. I then told the teacher in class at the time and was rushed home a few hours later. In the days that passed, the school demanded I go for testing prior returning to school. my uncle and I arrived to one of the very few clinics in Malawi. After numerous times, we arrived with the clinic we chose. Although we had arrived at the brink of dawn, a swarm of people already lined up as a crow flies. There was no authoritative figure to control the entrance, and the man whom himself had come to test had began writing down a list of people flaunting his authority and unexperienced. We waited in line the whole day until sunset drew near. And at last I was finally able to get tested. Much to my surprise, there were only 3 doctors in the whole clinic, seemingly also attending to a patient with only one of the doctors conducting tests. He demanded we call him some 5 days later. He later did not answer the phone. Until this day, I have not gotten my result. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that experience from Lesotho. I think we can all see that there are many issues affecting children during this COVID-19 environment. Thank you very much. Now, can I ask that we move on to Mozambique because of our time? Kino Fernande Caetano, are you there so that you can share with us your brief experience? Apologies for that. We are way over time. So at least if we can hear from the other country, that would be great. So Mozambique, I hope you can hear me. Are you there, Fernande Caetano? I'm not getting any feedback from Mozambique, unfortunately. Perhaps if they are online, they will be able to catch us whilst we are still having the discussion. So thank you very much for all. Again, an apology that we are way over time, but we started late as well, so we must apologize for that. However, there are a number of questions, and then just ask the present one or two of the presenters to just respond. Okay, so before we do that, I see Kino from Mozambique is with us now. Kino, please go ahead. I don't know whether... Yes. We can hear you. Please go ahead. Bon dia.
Bon dia. Bon dia.
Please go ahead.
In the parliament, that parliament is represented by children to collect the concerns of children from community, from school, from members of government, from the civil society, and from different people. We take this opportunity to represent the children in that parliament, and we encourage people to participate in that child parliament, and we collect questions, and we express the issues which affect us, and we present them to the government who can respond. And we think that those concerns will be attended to by the members of government through the child parliament. And we encourage the child participation, and we work with the civil society organization to promote the child rights. Now, children are becoming aware of their rights through the child parliament, and we have opportunity to represent the children and present all their problems and issues. And also I heard that other civil society organizations deal with different issues and concerns. We also do the same, try to respond to those problems. We participate also in the elaboration of the laws or the reports regarding children, because we should put the children at the center of all activities that we carry out, so that the children cannot be left behind. And we think that the rights of children will be promoted, and children will be given space to express themselves and to participate in the decision-making process. And also, he says that we have an opportunity to collect the children voices and to take them to different levels of the decision making. And we think that when the children will participate in decision making process, we will the participation will be at the level which is more elevated. And the children in our country should be aware of the provisions of the law. Now we lost his voice. We lost his voice. And we believe that together we will achieve more when we involve children and when we allow them to participate. So the work of children should be recognized in different levels. And also they should also participate in the elaboration of the legal instruments. And through that child parliament, we think that it's a good opportunity for children to participate and to raise their concerns and to address them to the civil society organizations and to benefit from quality services. That is what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kino. That was actually His Excellency, the President of the Child Parliament of Mozambique, Kino Caetano. Thank you so much for emphasizing on the aspect of child participation and why the voices of children are important. And it actually brings value to what the theme of our meeting today is, where we are saying stronger together for children. And what you are saying is that we are stronger together. We should be stronger together for children with children. So thank you so much for that. And colleagues, I think it's been good that we've heard from our children, and we can also take the issues that they brought up into the discussion. As we have run out of time, I'm just going to read through some of the questions and quickly ask the relevant presenter to just respond to the questions that are there. So I hope that you have been typing your questions on the question and answer space on this Zoom. So the first question is for the Malawi presenter. The question says, the advocacy process, does it also include SDGs, and how are the SDG indicators related to children fed into the advocacy? That's a question from Yvonne. Thank you for that. And another question that the presenter from Malawi also mentioned, the programs on sensitizing and providing knowledge around the different institutions that are responsible for implementing the children's rights, and the various key implementation processes. And so the question really is, how are these programs being carried out in Malawi? That's a question from a child actually in Lesotho. That's from Batung. And then there are also comments about the good work being done in Lesotho around financial support to the Children's Network. That's from Reverend Nyanete in Zimbabwe. The other comment from Kennedy. He says, thank you, Krinsa, for the launch of your strategic plan and for the great work. And thank you. It's just a comment really that Save the Children will continue to support. And then let me just see if there are other questions. Someone from South Sudan is also commenting that they are preparing a research on the cause for early marriages in South Sudan, and they would like to know more about this and whether we can share the presentations from this meeting. Yes, we will share the presentations from this meeting with you. So perhaps the questions really are to Henry about how Malawi is including SDGs and how they are incorporating the programs that are being carried out around the UNCRC. So Henry, maybe briefly, just respond.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chengi, and thanks so much for the two questions around sustainable development goals and also how we make sure that child rights are mainstreamed in programs in various communities. So for the sustainable development goals, Malawi domesticates them through the Malawi Growth Development Strategy. Now we are at the strategy number 3, which is in prayers in Malawi, support the development process for Malawi as a country. So when we are conducting the level of investment from maybe on various areas, thematic areas based on the MGDS 3, Malawi Growth Strategy number 3, which is a mirror or a tool that domesticates cases. We are providing feedback to relevant ministries and key environmental committees. We highlight what are the main interventions that can be implemented by the government or that can be prioritized by the government to make sure that the SDGs are implemented. We also have a national advocacy platform to which NGOCCR is a member, and we lead to the government addressing issues ranging from the sustainable development goals. Malawi's government has attention and investment to make sure they are implemented to the benefit of children, implemented across. We, as a membership organization, working through our membership or governance, child rights governance thematic area. So, working with all other members, our members is capacity building so that they are able to mainstream child rights in their programming, but also they are able to track progress using by assessing the instruments like the Charter and the UNCRC. So through that, we are able to make sure that child rights are being promoted. Financing for children. We have a CSO caucus on public finance for children, where CSOs share lessons and best practices, some gaps that maybe through their various studies, they share notes on what is happening, what is emerging, the challenges, and also the key issues, enjoying their rights at various levels. And also we have some organizations that work with children in as a parliament.
Henry, for responding to those questions. I noticed that there were questions also that were shared around the practice in Eswatini. And thank you so much, Mr. Mnisi. You already responded to those questions. There's another question for the Zambian experience about involving schools in the program. And this is a question from actually a child again who is asking how in Zambia they are also being included. Can I just give Judith 30 seconds to just respond to that, to just say how are you including the children in your advocacy work, and are you also including institutions of higher learning? And then after that, I'm going to ask our Madam Chair, Amelia, to give us closing remarks.
Thank you, Chenge, and thank you for the question. We are involving children in schools through the formation of child rights clubs and also children's school councils to be part of the governance system in schools, and also monitoring, their local monitoring of their focuses on children, persons below the age of 18. But some of the students that were previously in the child rights clubs, they do offer voluntary support for specific interventions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judith, for that response. For that, I hope that Batung, you heard that response, and I actually like what is going on here. And I wish we really had more time. And this is what CRINSA is really used to share those experiences with others and be able to learn from each other. So I really like this learning that is going on, where questions are being posed from someone in Lesotho about what is going on in Zambia, from someone in Zimbabwe about what is going on in Malawi, and we are able to then share all those experiences and learn from each other. And really, that is exciting for me, because that is why I wake up each morning to do this work, so that we can be stronger together for children. So thank you everyone for the presentations from the CSOs, from the children, from Felicitas as well earlier around the strategic plan, and also the children that have presented, and the questions and the responses. I appreciate your participation, even though we have gone way beyond time. Again, my apologies for that. But at this point in time, we need Nande from Mozambique to close this session for us. Over to you, Madam Chair.
Bem, bom dia a todos os presentes e queria agradecer tanto a participação de todos.
Thank you for your participation and to having taken part in this meeting with regard to the issues that were raised. Hearing experiences from different countries and in terms of participation of children in different countries at the political level and in different levels in the countries. This has been a very important process to empower children and to give them a voice. Also, we realize that we are working in a very difficult context with regard to the pandemic of COVID-19. We are living in times of uncertainty in terms of what the future holds for us. We would like to explore also the sustainability of our activities. We know that we have a lot that is at our hands, with a lot of issues yet to be resolved with governments and other interested parties. When we talk about to say that we are talking and trying to do as much as we can to facilitate better performance in our region and to influence the policies so that we can also reach out to children that are abused, that are abused especially during this time of COVID and within their families. We are trying to engage the government in order to bring peace in our different countries, because able to continue to work for the promotion of children's rights. A favorable environment where we can act. This has been a very productive session, and it was very good to hear the interaction that some countries have had with the members of parliament. We would like to highlight that access to justice of children is one, and it will be very important to ensure that all children from all. I would like to acknowledge all the participants who have taken part in this group. I believe that we are going to work together. We are going to follow up in a more profound way and explore how we can improve our actions. Thank you very much for the interpretation.
Falar da criança sem ela, é mesmo que dizer que estamos a deixar as crianças para trás. Portanto, numa das intervenções, conseguimos ouvir que é preciso termos as crianças sempre conosco, não é? Portanto, não deixar criança nenhuma atrás significa que temos que...
We are not going to leave any child behind. We are going to move in the same direction. And that is the spirit that we have. And thank you very much for your time, and thanks very much for participating.
Obrigado, Madam Chair, for those closing remarks. And since Madam Chair has really rounded up this discussion and closed, there are no further issues that we need to discuss. We are done for the day. And again, as CRINSA, we were very excited about this session, and we are so happy that it went well with you.